Making a camera in 2025 is no longer about photography, videography, or filmmaking, because every month it seems like a new camera or lens is released. And it's to the point where I don't even understand the difference between the models anymore. Even Fujifilm, which I shoot, I'm barely keeping up with the XH2, XH2S, XM5, whatever. There's so many names. Furthermore, with every incremental upgrade, it seems like another useless or unnecessary feature is added to make the camera new and exciting again. One camera company does it, everyone talks about it, and then all the other companies scramble to release their version of it so they can keep up. And thus, camera companies are trapped in a never-ending rat race with their competitors. Today, we're going to explore some reasons as to why this happened and what we can do as photographers. Let's begin. The spec race. Camera companies have always been in competition with one another, but never has been quite as fierce as now. With the advent of YouTube, a thick community of people who watch, read, and keep up with the latest gear has emerged. Videos reviewing the latest cameras, videos comparing cameras between companies, and videos telling you whether you should buy it or not. Because these videos can easily get clicks up to hundreds of thousands or millions of people, what an online personality thinks can heavily dictate sales and whether people buy the camera. We saw this with the Fujifilm X100V, the internet blowing this camera up to sky-high popularities, inflating the price and sales of the camera. You'll see this in how camera companies build their cameras as well. They know with each subsequent upgrade they need to bring video up from 4K to 6K, 6K up to 8K, raise the bitrate, up the megapixels, make the processor better so it's faster. It's no longer about making the best camera or even making a better camera for the consumer experience. It's about having a camera with better features because we can't fall behind. So, over the decades, cameras have become more tech than anything. It's kind of like how Apple and Androids release new phones every year. It's all about the features. Again, we saw this with Fujifilm as well. They've been doing film simulations for years now, but it was only recently that this concept became really popular. And now a bunch of other camera companies also have a film-like emulator, which at the end of the day are just fancy color profiles. To make things worse, we know camera companies have the capability to make something new or different, but few are willing to take such a gamble. Another example of this was the Fujifilm X Pro 3. It's one of the few modern cameras that took a gamble with a controversial build, its unorthodox screen. And although this camera was and still is highly popular with many photography enthusiasts, it definitely didn't do as well with the general consumer base. Why? Because it was too niche. Most entry photographers would be better suited with something standard, like the XE series. And for sure the X Pro 4 would be out or at least announced by now, had the X Pro 3 been a bigger success. So cameras like the XE4 take the cake and make more money for the company. Meaning that although there may be companies willing to try and make something different, the lack of mainstream appeal makes it tough to compete and stay alive. At least back in the day with film, you'd still buy the film, and camera companies would have a recurring customer. But now that things are mainly digital, companies need to make their money somehow. Which means making a camera more people will buy, which can in turn ruin some camera lines. Let's explore the downstream effects of this rat race. The downsides. The result of this never-ending rat race between companies hurts both the cameras and the consumers. For the cameras, it can lead to worse products, sometimes even ruining the camera. Wanting every camera to have 4K 10-bit 422 as a requirement to even be considered in this day and age is objectively crazy, especially when cameras will be rarely used for that feature. For example, take the Fujifilm X100VI. When making this camera, they add plenty of features. A 40 megapixel sensor, 6K video, IBIS, etc. A bunch of features were added to keep this camera relevant. And I'm not arguing against making this camera better. It makes sense because who would want to buy a new camera without any upgrades? However, if you look at the camera and what it's meant to be used for, much of it is overkill. The ability to record 6K 10-bit 422 in a camera like this is awesome, but who really needs that? And I believe that many companies cram their cameras with these features and upgrades so they can be comparable to other top cameras, even though it might ruin the camera itself. Realistically, there's only so much you can put into one camera, and adding one feature removes the option for another. So it may mean one individual component not functioning as well as it could or should. And although the X106 can do so, recording at such a high quality for an extended period of time will overheat the camera. Once you begin to notice this, you'll use the feature less and less so the camera doesn't overheat, until eventually you don't even use it anymore, which makes the feature almost pointless. That's what happened in my case. I rarely ever record video with this camera anymore because it's just more convenient to keep it as a photography specific camera. So it might even be better to not have the component than to have the component and it suck. But again, I understand why they do this. You can't improve the component without first starting it. The reason 8K exists is because they crammed a shitty 4K into a camera ages ago and improved upon that. And starting this process of adding higher video specs and IBIS into the 6 will make it so the next iteration will be that much better. Furthermore, you don't always have to shoot at the maximum quality. Cameras like the 6 still work great at 4K. So I get it. I'm also one of the many people who wanted the features like IBIS in the 6. I'm just a little conflicted at the moment. In addition to potentially ruining the camera, this can also ruin the consumer. Why? Because consumers will look for and buy the newer cameras thinking they're that much better. Plus, they'll disregard many older models despite them being good because they're not new. Furthermore, they'll continue to prioritize the wrong things about cameras, thinking it's the quality or resolution that makes the difference, when that really doesn't matter as much. The companies are just marketing that. Many experienced photographers already know this, because many of us still use old cameras that we bought years ago. We've already made the mistakes of trying to keep up with the new lenses and cameras and have realized it doesn't actually matter. You buy a new camera, then another one comes out even though this one just came out. And within a few months or year, it feels like this new camera you just bought is all of a sudden irrelevant. But it's not. It's the same camera it was as when you got it, and it works perfectly fine. And when you realize this, you'll begin to shift your focus onto more important things, like actual photography. We don't have to partake. At the end of the day, understanding the rat race of camera gear is important for any photographer, videographer, or filmmaker. Why? So we don't get caught up in it. This whole rat race can not only ruin the cameras they're building, but also us as consumers. Because the reality of it is, if camera companies release perfect cameras, people would stop buying their products. There would be no need to upgrade because you already have what you need. Therefore, less than perfect cameras will always be released to keep the market buying. So what can we do as consumers? It's simple. Don't buy into it. Now that we understand the rat race of camera gear, we don't have to participate. Start with the best camera for you, which is whatever camera you already have. Use that day in and day out to learn more about photography and yourself. The funny thing is, many people will get their photography fix in here and then will stop taking pictures for months. Meaning you didn't actually need that new camera, you were just itching to take photos. And going out and taking photos, scratching that photography itch, and not buying that new camera can save you a ton of money. Second, if you do this and fall into photography again, you'll learn more about which camera gear suits you. Because chances are there are limitations to whatever gear you have. And by understanding that, you'll know what your next camera or lens will be. When you understand the features that matter for you, you can ignore all the other fancy upgrades you don't need, like newer processors, more megapixels, and higher video specs. Those I found to be the features I care less about and are irrelevant for my photography. Then, maybe you'll spend your money on an older model that does exactly what you need, and you don't need to waste your dollars on the newest thing. Or maybe you'll find it was the focal length that wasn't clicking and you can just buy a secondhand lens and experiment with that. Understanding this process of our relationship between cameras and photography can help us escape the rat race. Camera companies over there can compete and do whatever they want with their fancy tech upgrades. And we'll do our own thing over here and focus on photography and the craft itself. Maybe we'll buy a new camera every 5 years if it suits our needs. But otherwise, we can let them have their battles, not get caught up in it, and enjoy more of what we got into this hobby for in the first place. Photography. That's my solution, at least. So I hope you found this interesting or valuable in some way. Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments down below. How do you handle the race between gear and not let it affect your relationship with photography and the craft? And if you'd like to learn more and build a solid foundation with photography, go to Photography Essentials. It's free. If you also want to help support me, you can add to the travel fund or grab a copy of my latest zine, The Sinking Sun. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in another video. Peace.